Hi again, my dears. Tonight's story follows June Holloway, an aviation safety investigator who leaves before she can be left, and Wren Amadi-Vesk, the external auditor whose signature can ground the fleet, who meets her at 11:52 p.m. When June grabs a stranger's sleeve to hide from her ex, what begins with a coat 4 inches too long, a boarding pass 6 years old, and a woman who says you may let go whenever you like, becomes a quiet, exacting romance about choice against possession, being seen against being documented, and the difference between a door left open and a door handed to you. My alarm goes off at 4:52 in the morning, never 4:50, and the difference is the only thing I own outright. 2 minutes. They are not for sleeping. They are for lying in the dark and letting the day arrive on my terms instead of the other way around, which is the closest thing to negotiation I have ever. I made coffee at 5:04, 12 ounces, black, no lid. The lid is important, so let me explain the lid. A lid means the coffee is going somewhere. A lid means you're drinking on the move. In a stairwell, in a car, in the 90 seconds between the thing you are doing and the thing you are about to do instead. I drank mine standing at the counter of an apartment I had lived in for 14 months, looking at a wall I had not decorated, and I finished it before I left. That was the rule. Coffee ends at the counter. If it comes with me, so does everything else. And I had spent 4 years teaching myself that nothing. The second box has never been opened. It sits in the corner by the radiator, sealed with tape that has gone the color of weak tea, and it has moved with me 6 times. I could tell you what's in it. I choose not to. The box and I have an arrangement. It stays shut, and I get to keep believing I am the kind of person who could unpack it any time I liked. The radiator, for its part, has opinions. It clanks at 5:11 every morning like a small bureaucrat clearing his throat before delivering bad news, and then it delivers nothing, and then it sulks. I left at 5:10. I parked in row 3 because rows 1 and 2 fill with people who need to be seen arriving, and I have made a career out of the opposite. My name is June Holloway. I am 29. I investigate aviation safety incidents for Cordera Regional, which means that when something goes wrong at 24,000 feet, I'm one of the people who has to write down why in language that will survive a lawyer. Here is what my job actually is. My job is 8 letters. My job is the difference between causal factor and contributing factor. And if you have never had to care about that difference, I envy you the entire architecture. A causal factor is the thing that broke the airplane. A contributing factor is the thing that was, regrettably, nearby. When a report comes back to me with causal quietly changed to contributing, nobody has redacted any. Someone has simply opened 8 letters of legal daylight, and through that daylight, over 18 months, an entire finding will walk out of the building and never be seen again. I had filed a report on a bleed valve 6 weeks earlier. In it, I had used the word cause. I had also, and this is the part that would eventually matter more than I understood at the time, recorded the event time as 22:47. Not approximately 22:45. Not the 22 to 45 window. 22 to 47. Because that was when it happened, and because the software rounds to the nearest 5 minutes, and because 4 minutes is where people die. I still log duty time on. I am aware of how this makes me. The report came back at 3:10 that afternoon, and I knew before I opened. You always know. A return document sits in your inbox with a particular posture, the way a letter from a hospital sits differently in your hand than a letter from anyone else. Contributing. You're doing the face. Priya Raghunath is 5 feet 1 inch of ramp supervisor with the operating volume of a pushback tug, and she has been my closest friend for 6 years on the strength of a single fact. She has never once let me get away with anything. I don't have a face. You have the face. It's the face you make at documents. She pulled a chair over, backwards, and sat on it like a person who has never in her life been asked to leave a room. Speaking of documents, Event 6, Priya. Event 6, she said, in her report voice, which is my report voice, which is the joke. Time, 1940, last Thursday. Location, the bar on Quebec. Hazard, a woman in a green jacket, described by witnesses as interesting. Contributing factor, subject left after 11 minutes. She looked up. Causal factor, also that. You've made your point. I've made 6 of. I've got 14 more. June, I've got a whole binder. There's a binder, there's a tab system. She was delighted. She is always delighted. It is the most exhausting thing about her, and I would not survive without. Anyway, you heard about Halbrecht? I had heard about Everyone had heard about Halbrecht Group are external auditors, which is a polite way of saying they are the people an airline hires when it has decided to be honest and has not yet decided how much. They send one person. That person reads everything, and then that person signs or does not sign, and fleets stop flying on the strength of a name in a box. They're sending someone in September, Priya said. That's what Ilan says. Ilan says a lot of things. Ilan said the de-icer was going to fail on the 14th, and it failed on the 14th. Ilan works in ops. He had access to the maintenance schedule. Ilan, Priya said serenely, is a prophet, and you're a coward. And both of those things can be true. That evening, on my phone, in a stairwell, I scrolled apartment listings in a city I had not been offered a job in. I want to be clear that nobody had asked. Nobody had suggested it. I simply do this the way other people bite their nails. And I had been doing it since I was 25, and I had never once asked myself what it was for. Rehearsal is not prepared. It is grief, filed early, in the hope of a disc. A person does not notice becoming smaller. There is no moment. There is only the day the code fits different. I had a flight that night, Denver to Portland, the 12:20, which is the flight for people whose lives have gone slightly wrong in ways that cannot wait until. I got to gate B14 at 11:40. I had a bag I had packed on Sunday, because I pack a bag every Sunday whether or not I am going anywhere. And if you want to understand me faster than I understood myself, start there. At 11:52, I looked up, and Ellery Voss was standing 40 feet away by the arrivals. My body understood before I did. That is the thing nobody tells you about your body. It has its own filing system, and it does not consult you. My hands went. Something behind my sternum performed a maneuver I would later describe in the privacy of my own skull as an unskilled. My feet had already. My body treated the sighting of my ex-girlfriend as an international incident, mobilized every available resource, and did not once ask me for authorization. She looked good. She always looks good. That is not a complaint, it is a specification. Ellery has excellent lighting, in the sense that she carries it with her. She was laughing at something, at someone, a hand on the arm of a woman I didn't know, and the arrivals board above her flickered and reshuffled itself like it was trying to get her attention. I had not seen her in 4 years. I had left her 6 days before she would have left me. I had seen the second toothbrush, I had seen the 11:40 phone flip, and I had gotten ahead of it. And I had called that efficiency, and I had told exactly nobody the truth of it, including the woman herself, including me. She turned her head. I did not think. I want that on the record, in the interest of accuracy, because everything that followed was the opposite of thinking. I turned and I reached, and I took hold of the nearest available human being. Except that I didn't. I took hold of a coat. That's the order it happened in, and I have never been able to make it happen in any other order, no matter how many times I run the tape. Charcoal wool. Heavy, properly heavy. The way things are when someone spent money 9 years ago and never had to spend it again. My fist closed around a sleeve that was, I registered with the useless precision of my entire personality, about 4 inches too long for me and exactly right for whoever was inside. Then there was a woman. She was standing at a podium with a boarding pass in her other hand and she did not startle. I need you to understand that. I am a stranger who sees the stranger in an airport at midnight, and she did not jump, she did not pull away, she did not make the small sharp sound that people. She looked down at my hand on her sleeve. Then she looked past me at the arrivals board at Ellery and back. It took her under 2 seconds. She did not ask what was happening. She did not say. She shifted her weight 4 inches, maybe 5. Nothing you'd photograph, and put herself between me and the rest of the airport, and went absolutely. I have spent my whole life in rooms full of people performing weather. Everyone moved. Everyone is always moving. The man at the podium was clicking. The woman in 24C was reorganizing a tote bag that did not need it. I move. I rearrange things. I check exits. I count. And this woman stood there like a load-bearing wall and did not move at all. And the effect of it was that the entire gate suddenly revealed itself to me as a room full of nervous mammals, and I could see every one of them. And I could see myself. June! Ellery's voice. Warm. It has always been warm. That's the trick of it. That's the whole and she came over. Of course she came. June Holloway. God. You look, are you flying? Where are you going? Portland. Portland, she said, like it was a punchline she'd write down later. Then, to the woman in the coat, in the voice she uses on people she has decided to include, she does this. She just appears somewhere, and then she doesn't. A little laugh, generous, inviting me into it. You always vanish. There it is. 4 years and 40 feet and 9 seconds. And there it is. Not an insult. Not a lie. It was an anecdote, and everyone was welcome, and I was the material. I opened my mouth. I have no idea what was going to come out, and I have thought about it more than I would like to. The woman in the coat spoke before I did. She's with me. 3 words. She said them the way you'd read out a. No warmth, no challenge, no performance, just a fact placed on the table where everyone could see it. And the extraordinary thing, the thing I have never once been able to explain, is that she did not look at me while she said it. She did not check whether I was all right with it. She simply put it down between Ellery and me, like a wall, and let it be true for as long as it needed to be. Ellery's face did something small. Oh, she said. Oh, I didn't. And then she was laughing again. She was already moving. She was already telling a different story about all of this to someone else. Well, good. That's good for you, June. Boarding call. Zone 1. And then she was gone, folded back into the crowd, and I was standing at gate B14, with my hand still closed around a stranger's sleeve, like a drowning person who has been pulled out and has not yet agreed to let go of. 90 seconds. That's what the whole thing. I know because I. We walked down the jet bridge together, and neither of us said anything, and the jet bridge groaned under us, the way jet bridges do, a long tube of corrugated complaint, holding its. At the door, she stopped. You may let go whenever you like. I looked down. My hand. Her sleeve. 90 seconds had become 4 minutes, and I had not noticed, and 4 minutes is where people die. I did not let go. She looked at me then, properly, for the first time, and it was not kind, and it was not unkind. It was the look of a woman reading a document she had not expected to find interesting. 2A, she said, glancing at my boarding. You're 2B. I know. Then let's get you seated, Miss Holloway. And I stood in the doorway of a Bombardier at 12 minutes past midnight, holding the sleeve of a woman whose name I did not know, and understood with the terrible, orderly clarity I bring to everything except my own life, that I had never once told her mine. She let me in first. That is, she stepped back and turned slightly, and the aisle became available, and at no point did she gesture or wave me forward or do any of the small managing things people do. She simply stopped occupying the seat. I have thought about that a great deal. 2B was by the window. I sat down and my left hand went flat on the tray table, palm down, all 5 fingers, which is a thing I do and have never explained to anyone. She sat. The coat came off. She folded it once and laid it across the armrest between us like a border treaty, and I noticed the interior label was torn, not frayed, torn, a clean vertical tear, as though someone had removed the name in a hurry 9 years ago and never gone back. Wren Amadi-Vesk. June Holloway. I know, the cabin lights. I turned my head. You said it in the jet bridge. No. You said Portland. Your ex-girlfriend said Holloway. So you were paying attention. I was 3 feet away and someone was... Yes, that's not the same as paying attention. It isn't, she agreed. I was also paying attention. Somewhere behind us, a man was explaining the concept of a middle seat to a flight attendant who had heard of them. The overhead bin above 2A had been closed 4 times and had reopened itself 4 times, apparently on principle, and had now entered arbitration with a member of cabin crew. I should apologize. For what? For the assault. It was a sleeve. It was attached to a person. Loosely, she said, and did not smile, and that was somehow worse. I filed the whole encounter, provisionally, under things I had probably imagined. It's a large file. It has a tab system Priya would... You said I was with you. You were. You didn't ask me. No, she said. You had 90 seconds and 1 hand and no plan. I made a decision on your behalf. She turned her head then, and her eyes were very large. It was expedient, and I'm not certain. If you'd like, I'll find her at baggage claim and correct it. I laughed. It came out wrong, 1 syllable, no air behind it. You'd do that. I'd do that. You'd walk up to a stranger in Portland and tell her that actually you're not my girlfriend. I'd walk up to a stranger in Portland and tell her that I said a thing about you without your permission and I'm withdrawing it. She said this the way you'd read a serial number. The rest is your business. There is a difference between a door being open and a door being handed. I had spent 29 years unable to tell you what it was, and I found out at 12:41 in the morning at 3,000 feet from a woman I'd known for 49 minutes, and the discovery cost me something I have not finished paying. Don't, I said. Please. Then it stands. She looked forward to it. For tonight. It expires when we land. That's very tidy. I like things that expire. Cruise. The engine settled into that note they find. The one that sounds like a room full of people agreeing about something. I was cold. I am always cold on the 12:20. It's a known deficiency of the airframe and of me, and I did the thing where you pretend you aren't. She noticed in under 30 seconds. She picked up the coat. And then she stopped and held it and said, "May I?" 2 words. That's all it was. She had already put it over me in her head. I could see that the arm was already lifted, and she stopped anyway, and asked and waited, and the waiting was the whole thing. I have been given a great many things by people who did not ask first. I have been decided about. I have been surprised with a birthday, once in a restaurant in front of 12 people, and I smiled for 3 hours and cried in a parking. Command has never moved. Command is just weather. Being asked cracked something. Yes, I said. The coat came down and it weighed more than I expected, and it smelled like cedar and cold air and a hotel I had never stayed in. The sleeves went 4 inches past my hand. I looked like a child in it. I did not keep it. It's not a gift. Noted. You're borrowing it. I understand the concept of a coat, miss. Holloway, she said to the seat back in front of her. I'm not certain you do. We didn't talk after. She read. I sat inside 9 years of somebody else's wool and watched the dark go past at 400 knots and did not sleep, and there was a boarding pass stub in the left pocket that my fingers found at some point around Idaho, soft as cloth, the ink gone. I did not take it. It was not mine to read. I put my thumb on it for 20 minutes like a woman keeping her place in a book she hasn't been given. On descent, my left hand went flat on the tray table, palm down, all 5 fingers. Does that help? She said. I looked at her. She was looking at my hand, not at me at my hand, the way you look at a... And this is the part I want to be honest about, because it is the part where I ruined it. Something in me went sideways. Because being noticed and being assessed are, as far as my nervous system is concerned, the same event, and I had spent 3 years with a woman who narrated me warmly to rooms, and my body no longer knew how to receive attention that wasn't a verdict in progress. It's a habit. Flat. All right, it doesn't mean anything. I didn't say it did. You were writing it down. She was quiet for 3 seconds. Then, I wasn't? But I understand why you think so. She let it go. She let it go so completely that by the time we hit the runway, I wanted to take it all back and couldn't, because taking it back would mean admitting there had been something to take. Baggage claim 214. The carousel began its slow editorial groan. She held out her hand and I shook it, which was absurd, which was correct. Thank you, I said. For the coat or the lie? Both. The lies expired. The coat can wait. And she was gone into the 2A. M. Of a city I had no business in, and I was standing at a carousel in charcoal wool 4 inches too long. And it was only in the taxi that I understood I had not given it back, and she had not asked for it, and neither of those things had been an accident. 3 days later, I made coffee at 5-4 and put... I want you to understand that I did not decide to do this. I reached for the cupboard and there was a lid in my hand and it went on the cup. And I carried the cup out of my apartment for the first time in 4 years. And I got 6 feet down the corridor before I noticed, and I stood there at 5-6 in the morning holding evidence. The radiator did not come. It has more discretion than it deserves credit for. Event 6, Priya said, at 3:10, backwards on a... No. Time, 23:52. Location, gate B14. Priya, hazard, she said, over me, a stranger. Contributing factor, an ex-girlfriend, previously logged, see events 1 through... Causal factor, she flipped a page in a binder that I promise you was real cowardice. That's the same as the contributing factor. No, June. The contributing factor was Ellery. The causal factor was you grabbing a woman like a raccoon, grabbing a sandwich, and then not getting her number. I got her name. The room stopped. Ilan looked up from ops. Ilan is 44 and has the affect of a man who has already read. He said nothing. He wrote something on a post-it. He stuck the post-it inside a drawer and closed the drawer. There's $63 in that drawer. Do you want to know what it's for? No, it's for you. I said no, it's about you, she said, which is a different preposition and a worse one. Halbrecht arrived on the 9th. Conference room, 14 people, 10. I got there at 9:52 and sat where I always sit and rearranged 3 pens into a line and then rearranged. She came in at 10. Charcoal, a different. She sat. She did not open her laptop or shuffle paper or say good morning or click anything, and within 90 seconds the room began to come apart in the quietest way I have ever witnessed. Because everyone moves. That's the thing. Everyone in that room was performing weather. Dennis clicked his pen 9 times. Our VP of Ops touched his collar twice, and then a third time, and then made himself stop. Which is worse, someone's chair made a sound like a small animal being asked a hard question. And Wren Amadi-Vesk sat in the middle of it entirely still, and the stillness worked. You could see all of us. I could see me. I had my hand on the 3 pen. I moved my hand. I'll be reading everything. That's not a threat. It's a schedule. And then I'll write down what I read. That's not an answer. It's the whole answer. It's the only answer I've got. She looked down the table. Findings aren't accusations. I'd like everyone comfortable with that before we start. That's easy to say from your chair. It is, she agreed. Almost everything is. A finding ends careers. An accusation ends careers. A finding ends aircraft. She let that sit for 2 seconds. There's a difference, and I'd rather you learn it from me than from a lawyer. And if the finding's wrong, then you'll tell me, and I'll consider it. Consider. That's not a yes. No. It isn't. I don't hand out yeses at 10-4 on Holloway. I hand out consideration. It's less satisfying and it's worth considerably more. 14 people, and she had not looked at me once until my name. And when it came, she said it like she'd been holding it in her mouth since Portland. I said, noted. Dennis clicked his pen. She found me in the corridor at 7:40, or I found her. The building had emptied out and the corridor lights were on, the timer that gives you 12 minutes and then reconsiders. I had the coat over my arm. You forgot this in Portland. I didn't. You left it. Yes, I held it out anyway. She looked at it. She did not take it. It's yours, I said. It is, so take it. You're cold in that building. It's 62 degrees on your floor, and you've been running the report queue since 6. You'll be here until 9. She paused. It's a coat, miss. Holloway. It's not a lien. Everything's a lien. That, she said, is the saddest sentence anyone has said to me this year, and I audit airlines. I stood there with 9 pounds of wool over my arm and no argument left. Keep it. Give it back when you're not cold. She started to go. That's not a metaphor. I'll want it in November. She got 12 feet down the corridor, and the lights ahead of her came on in sequence, and she thought she was alone, and she hummed. 4 notes. I want to be precise, because it's the only gift I can give you. They were not adjacent. It was the sound of a woman lass who had never once heard herself tunelessly and privately happy, walking away from a conversation she thought had ended. I said, "Why did you say my name like that?" She did not turn around for 2 full seconds, and when she did, her face had closed 6%. And I understood later, much later, that this was Wren Amadi-Vesk. Your bleed valve report, she said. What about it? 22:47. That's when it happened. I've read 400 pages of your company this week. 400. Everyone else wrote approximate. Everyone else wrote the 22 to 45 window. The lights went out behind her and came back on, and she did not blink. You put the time to the minute. Nobody does that. Nobody has done that in 11 years. It's not, I wanted to know who did. And the corridor timer ran out. We stood in the dark for 4 seconds before the sensor forgave. She was gone by the time. The APU on ship 4412 started running rough on a Thursday at 11:20 at night, and I heard it from 200 feet away across wet concrete, and I stopped walking. You don't hear it as a... You hear it as a sentence with a word missing. An auxiliary power unit at idle makes a note One note, held, boring, and that boredom is the entire point of it. This one was doing something underneath a hitch, maybe 3 times in 10 seconds, like a man clearing his throat, before saying something he's decided. Bleed valve, I said, to nobody. Say that again, Wren said, from 6 feet behind me. I hadn't heard her come out. Nobody ever heard her. Bleed valve. Sticking? Probably the same 4-position actuator we wrote up in June, which we called contributing, which means somebody's still flying it. The ramp at 11:20 is its own country. Ilan was out there with 3 others and a tug, and the tug idled and grumbled and sounded exactly like a man being asked to work a double. The floodlights had that habit floodlights have of making everyone look like they've been caught at something. Wren walked past me and stood 40 feet from the aircraft and did nothing. She listened for 90 seconds. I counted because I counted. 2 questions. Go. If I asked maintenance right now, what would they tell me? That it's within limits. Is it? Yes. That's the problem. She looked at me. And here is what she did not do. She did not She did not defer to me. Either she didn't do the thing where a powerful person performs humility at you, hands you the floor with a little flourish, and waits to be thanked for the loan of it. She took a notebook out of her coat and wrote down what verbatim. My words, in her handwriting, on her paper, going into a document that could stop 22 aircraft. Then she said, time, 23:24. She wrote 23:24. I have been in this industry for 7 years, and I have been believed perhaps 4 times, and every single time it was after an argument. Ilan, 30 feet away, watching this, said to absolutely no one, she is staying. Ilan, I didn't say anything. June. You said, I made a sound, he said. Sounds aren't findings. And he walked off with the tug, and I heard, from somewhere behind a container, a noise that was unmistakably 3 grown adults trying not. The hangar office at 1 in the morning is the best room in the world, and I will not be taking questions. There's a desk that has survived 2 floods. There's a lamp with a dent in the shade from an incident nobody will discuss. There's a coffee machine that has been dying since 2019 and has made a lifestyle out of it. It produces 4 ounces of something, at length, with sound effects like a small animal delivering a monologue it doesn't believe in. We had 400 pages between us. Hers were tabbed. Mine were not, because I don't need tabs, because I know where things. Page 212. The fuel log. You know it by number. I wrote it. You wrote 340 pages of this. You know all of them by number? No. Just the ones that were changed. She stopped with a pen 2 inches off the paper and did not write. That was the only tell she had. Wren Amadi-Vesk does not startle, does not blink, does not lean. She just stops momentarily, the way a machine stops when you've given it something it wasn't built for. How many were changed? 9. Out of 340. Yes, say them. Now, miss. Holloway, she said. I've got 6 hours and a bad coffee. Say them. And I said them. All 9. Page numbers, dates, the word before and the word after. And by the 4th one, my voice had gone somewhere strange, because I had never said these out loud. Not once. Not to Priya, not to anyone. And there is a particular horror in discovering that you have been keeping a list. She wrote for 11 minutes. She didn't interrupt. Then she said, who changed them? I don't know. Guess? I don't guess. That's the whole job. Correct answer, she said. And something happened at the left corner of her mouth that a generous witness might have called an event. The coffee machine made its noise. The lamp buzzed. Outside, at 1:40 in the morning, the wind had started to do something with the hangar door. A long metallic sigh, a slow settling, the sound of a very large object deciding it has an opinion after all. Can I ask you something? I said. You may. If I'm right, if it's causal, what happens? You know what happens. 22 aircraft, she said, for between 9 and 40 days. And 400 people who don't fly them get told there's no work on Monday. And you'd sign that. I'd sign with. The consequences aren't a factor. That's not callousness. That's the only thing that makes the signature worth anything. She turned a page. If my name meant whatever's convenient, nobody would be afraid of it. And then nothing would ever get fixed. And then somebody's daughter would go into a mountain in 3 years and the report would say, contributing. That's a very clean way to live. It's the only clean thing about me, she said. Everything else is. I'd rather have one. And if I'm wrong, then you're wrong. And I'll write that. And it'll be in your file. And you'll survive it. Will I? You survived Portland. That's not the same. No. In Portland, you had a plan. I put my head down on 212 pages and laughed for 4 seconds. You know what you are? I said into the. You're a finding. Am I? You're a finding. You're not an. You're just this thing that gets written down and then everything has to change. She was quiet. Then she said, I've been called worse by better. Have you? No, she said. That was a lie. Nobody's ever said anything to me as good as that. And I've been in 14 countries. Wanting is loud. It announces itself, it fills the room, it takes up all the oxygen and calls that in. Being asked is quiet. It's the only one you can hear from underneath. At 2:10, the field went down. Not dramatically. Weather never arrives dramatically. That's a thing people who don't work outside believe. It arrives as a number. The number was 62%. 62% of departures cancelled, which is the percentage at which an airport stops being a place people are going through and starts being a place people are in. The building began to. You could feel it, the specific atmospheric change of 200 people deciding, one at a time, that they were going home. And she didn't move. The snow came at the hangar window sideways, and the wind hit the door, and the whole structure did that thing, that groan, and every human being in a 400-foot radius was in motion, packing, calling, running, and Wren Amadi-Vesk sat under a dented lamp with a pen in her hand, and was the only still object in a moving. It is not that she is calm. Calm is a This was structure. She was load-bearing, and the storm was just something happening to a building she was holding up. You should go, she said, without looking up. The 101's closed. I know. So there's nowhere to go. I know that too. I said it anyway. You'll notice I keep doing that. I did notice. I had been noticing for 5 weeks. Every conversation we had ever had, she had built an exit into it, first, before anything else, like a woman who reads the placard on every aircraft she boards. You may let go when it expires when we let. Give it back when you're not. You should go. Nobody had ever built me an. Ellery built me a room, warmly, with excellent lighting, and then told everyone the story of how I kept trying to. Why do you do that? Do what? The doors. You keep putting doors in things. She kept the pen. She set it down parallel to the edge of the desk, and I watched her do it, and I understood that Wren Amadi-Vesk has her own version of 3 pens, and I had just never been in the room for it. Because I'm 34, she said, and I'm 6 feet of authority in a coat, and my name stops airplanes, and when I want something, people give it to me. She looked. That's not consent. That's compliance. I've had 11 years of compliance. Holloway, and it's very smooth, and it's the loneliest thing I've ever been handed. The lamp buzzed. You know what I do at 2. I count the ways a person could have said no, and I check whether any of them were real. I stood up. I want to be honest about it. It was 6 feet. It took me 4 seconds. which is a very long time to cross 6 feet, and I felt every one of them, and I have never in my life been so aware of choosing some. I stopped in front of her. She stayed sitting. That was deliberate. I know it was deliberate, because everything she does is because a woman that still does not accidentally remain below your eye level. Say it, she said. Say what? Whatever you came over here to say. I'm not going to guess, and I'm not going to reach, and I'm not going to make this easy. I want to. Her hands were flat on the desk, palm down, all 5 fingers, and I saw it, and my chest did something I have no vocabulary. God, I want to. But that's not the same as you wanting. So tell me which one we're doing. The snow hit the window. Both, I said. We're doing both. Say the words. I want to kiss you. Then ask me. Wren said, the way I'd have to ask you. May I? And she stood up 6 feet of her, unhurried. And the chair didn't even scrape, because of course it didn't. And she said, yes, it was not permission. That's what I understood in the half second before, when her hand came up and stopped 2 inches from my face and waited there for me to close the distance myself, because she was not going to close it. She was never going to close it. That was the whole architecture of it. It was not surrender, either. She didn't give me anything. It was an answer. She had been asked a question for the first time in 11 years, and she answered it. And I have thought about that for longer than I have thought about anything else. I closed the 2 inches. Later, I would remember the night in fragments, and I have never been able to put them in order, and I've stopped trying. The dent in the lampshade going dark. Her thumb, once, along the edge of my jaw, and then stopping, is this all right? And me saying yes into her mouth like a woman signing. The wind at 3. My hands not knowing where to be, and her taking one of them and putting it flat against her sternum, palm down, all 5 fingers, and saying there, you can feel it. I'm not calm. I've never once been calm. The coffee machine, delivering 4 ounces of monologue to an empty room at some point around 4. Snow doing the thing snow does against glass, which is nothing, which is the sound of nothing arriving. The coat on the back of it. Not on me, not on her. Just there, across the room, 9 pounds of charcoal wool with a torn label and a stub in the pocket, waiting like a thing that has all the time in the world. And at 5:04 in the morning, when the wind had gone and the light had that color it only has 40 minutes after a storm, I heard her in the corridor outside, thinking she was alone. 4 notes. Not adjacent. I lay on a desk that has survived 2 floods and listened to a woman who has never once heard herself, and I did not tell her. Not yet. The findings came back on the 24th at 8 in the morning. She did it in a room with 2 people in it, which was me and her, and she did it first thing, before anyone else in the building had a version of it. That was deliberate. I have never met anyone who front-loads the worst thing so consistently. Page 212. And 9 others. You found it. I found it 6 days ago. I've spent 6 days trying to find a way. It isn't what it is. She put the page down and squared it to the edge of It's causal. 22 aircraft. Between 9 and 40 days. 400 people told there's no work on Monday. Okay, I said. That's not the problem. I know it's not the problem. The problem, she said, is that the finding rests not partially, entirely. The 9 changes are the case, which means when Halbrecht's name goes on this and Cordera's lawyers open it, and they will open it, they have 14 people whose entire job is opening things. The first thing they'll find is that the auditor spent 5 weeks in a hangar with the source. The radiator in that room, it had nothing to add. It just wanted to be counted. So you don't sign. If I don't sign, 22 aircraft with a sticking actuator keep flying, And I've participated in exactly the thing I've spent 11 years refusing to participate in. She looked at me, and if I do sign, the first sentence anyone says about you for the rest of your career is not going to be about the report. There it was, laid on the table like a serial number. Say the sentence. I said. You know the sentence. Say it. She's the one who slept with the auditor. She did not flinch when she said it. And I have thought since that not flinching cost her more than anything else in that room. That's the sentence. It's not true in any way that matters, and it will be true in every way that works. So what do? I recuse, she said. Today. I state the conflict myself, in writing, before anyone finds it. Halbrecht sends someone else. They rerun 400 pages. It takes 11 weeks, and the actuator flies for 11 more weeks, and there's a 3% chance that matters, and a 97% chance it doesn't. And I've never once in my life been comfortable with a 3. She slid the paper across. Or you tell me not to. And I sign it Thursday. I looked at it. Punt. You're handing me this. Yes. You're handing me 400 jobs and 22 aircraft and my own name and asking me to choose yes, she said. I am. Because it's your report and your career and your face in the sentence. And I'm not going to make that decision for you at 8 in the morning in a room with 2 people in it. And God help me, I hated her. I want to be honest about that, because it's the ugliest thing in this whole story and it's mine. She handed me the door the way she always did, the way I had spent 5 weeks being undone by, and this time the room on the other side was on fire. And I understood, for one clean second, why people prefer to be told. Being decided about is a cage, but it's a cage with a roof. Ellery posted the photograph on the 26th at 6:47. I know the time because my phone told me, face down on the counter at 5:04, where it has no business being, and it buzzed, and I turned it over with the lid in my other hand. It was me. Asleep on a plane, 5 years ago, head against the window, mouth slightly open. Portland or Boise, one of those. Some flight I don't remember, out of a life I'd already decided to. She'd kept it. That's the part. For 4 years, through a breakup and 2 apartments and whatever her life is now, she had kept a photograph of me. The caption said, "Found this." She never could stay awake or anywhere. And then a heart. A small one. It was fond. I need you to understand how fond it was. There was no knife in it. If you showed it to a stranger, they'd say, "Ah," and they'd be right. And that is precisely 4,000 people. 11 of them work with. By 9, someone had commented, "This is so June," and 6 people had agreed, and 2 of them had my extension. Here is what a photograph like that. It doesn't accuse. It authors you. It says, here is what she is, here is the caption that goes underneath, and everyone nodded. And it went out to 4,000 people. At the exact hour, a woman with 400 pages was waiting for me to say a sentence about who I was. I had spent 5 weeks discovering I could be a person who arrived. And at 6:47 on a Tuesday, in 22 words and a small heart, I was returned. The ops floor knew by 10. That's the thing about a chorus. They're never cruel. That would be survivable. Dennis said, "Hey, June," in a voice with 4% too much. Someone stopped talking when I came around the partition, and then started talking again about something else, badly, and I could hear the scene. The coffee machine on 3 made its noise, and even that sounded like it had read something. Nobody said anything. Everybody knew. And my nervous system, which cannot tell the difference between being noticed and being assessed, and never could, filed all 63 people in that building under witnesses, and I went into the stairwell and scrolled apartment listings in Boise for 40 minutes. June. Priya, in the stairwell, at 11:20. Don't. I'm not going to. You have a binder. You have a tab system. Every single thing about me is a bit, Priya, it's an incident log, it's event 6, and I stopped. She'd gone very still, and Priya Raghunath is never still, and I watched her decide not to say the 4 things. That's not what the binder is. I know. June. That's not what the binder is. I know, I said. I know. And I went down the stairs, and she let me. And letting me was the most generous thing anyone did for me that month. I filed the boys' application at 4:12 that afternoon. It took 11 minutes. I am extremely good at leaving. I have the forms. Then I went home and packed the bag. I pack every Sunday, and it was a Tuesday, and the bag did not come. It has been waiting 4 years for this exact. It had the smug patience of a thing that. The second box sat by the radiator with its tape gone the color of weak tea and said nothing at all, because it didn't have to. It had one. It had been telling me for 6 apartments what kind of woman I was, and I had spent 5 weeks in a coat pretending otherwise. I folded the coat at 9:40. I did it properly. Sleeves in, once across, the way you'd fold something you were returning to a shop. My hands were steady, which I resented. The stub was in the left pocket and I did not take it out, because it was not mine, and because I had never once read it, and I have thought since that not reading it was the last honest thing I did that. I drove to the field at 10:20 and put it on her chair in the hangar office. No note. Leaving early is not cost. It is a bill you pay in advance, at a higher rate, for a thing that may never arrive. She didn't call. That's the part I hadn't planned for. I had planned for the call. I had 6 versions of the conversation ready. I had rehearsed the flat voice. I had a line about how it was expedient, and I wasn't certain it was right. Day 1. Nothing. Day 2. Nothing. She was in the building. I saw her at 40 feet across the ops floor, and she looked at me for exactly as long as she'd look at anyone. And then she looked at a document. Day 3. Nothing. Day 4, I understood what she was doing, and it was so much worse. She was never going to come and get me. That was the entire architecture of her, and I had known it since a jet bridge at 11:58 at night. You may let go whenever you like, and I had gone and let go, and she was doing me the enormous, unbearable courtesy of believing that I meant it. Day 5. Nothing. Day 6, I sat in my car in row 3 for 22 minutes and did not go. The airport hotel bar closes at 11:30, and I was there at 11:10 on the 6th day, which is not a coincidence, because she stays there, because she has stayed there for 5 weeks, because I am an investigator and I have known her room floor since the 2nd week and had never once used it. She was at the end of the bar with a notebook and nothing in a glass. I sat down once. She didn't say anything for 40 seconds. She kept her pen. She set it parallel to the edge of the bar. Then she said, "What are you afraid of?" One question. That's all she ever knew. She didn't ask why I'd gone, or what the coat meant, or whether I'd chosen about the report, and I understood she was not going to ask me any of those, ever, because all of them were mine to bring. And I was so tired. I left her 6 days early, I said. Ellery. 6 days. I'd seen the toothbrush. I'd seen the phone go face down at 11:40, and I did the math, and I gave it a week. My voice was doing something. I got out on day 6 of 7. And I have told 400 people, including her, including Priya, including myself, that I left because I'm efficient. She said no. My mother told me about the divorce on a Tuesday at dinner. Past tense. It was already done. It had been done for 9 days. The paperwork was in. And she announced it the way you'd announce a completed project. I was looking at the bar. I was 11. And the thing is, she wasn't cruel either. Nobody in my life has ever been cruel. They've just all been finished. June. Nobody has ever chosen me out loud. Not once. In 29, every single person who has ever kept me has done it silently and then told the room about it afterwards in a voice like a joke. And I have never, and I stopped because my hands were flat on the bar, palm down, all 5 fingers. And I saw them, and she saw me see them. The bar's ice machine dropped a load somewhere behind us and made the only sound in the building. She didn't touch me. She didn't fix it. She didn't say, "That's not true, I choose you," which is what I wanted, which is what would have ruined everything. She said, "Then I won't claim you." I looked up. I'm not going to do it. Not in a bar, not at 11:20, not to make this stop hurting. If I say it now, you'll never know whether it was true or whether it was medicine. So what then? I'll just be visible, Wren said. That's all I've got. I'll be where I said I'd be. You'll know where I am, and you'll know what I'd say. And I'm not going to say it until you've walked to me in a room with the lights on. Then she picked up her pen. "The report's Thursday," she said. "That's still yours." And she paid, and she left, and she did not look back once. And I sat in an airport hotel bar at 11:30 at night with 2 empty stools and both of my hands flat on the wood. And nothing had been decided, and I did not leave. I withdrew the Boise application at 5:31 the next. It took 4 minutes. There is a form. There is always a form, and I know all of them, and that is either the tragedy of my life or the reason I survived it. I didn't tell anyone. Not Priya, not Ilan, not the drawer with $63. I did it in the dark at my counter with 12 ounces of coffee and no lid, and the radiator clanged at 5:11 like a small bureaucrat who had been expecting a different memo and was too professional to say so. Then I opened the document at 5:36 and I wrote my own, not a supplement, not a note of the whole thing under my own name, all 9 changes, page 212 and the other 8 dates and the word before and the word after. And at the top, in the box where the software wants you to put contributing, I typed causal. I put my time on it to the minute, 6:14. Here is what that costs, in case you are wondering, because I knew exactly and I did it anyway. It costs the assumption of neutrality. It puts my name inside the finding instead of underneath it, which means for the rest of my working life, I am not the investigator who found the actuator. I am the investigator who had a position. It means 400 people know whose fault Monday. It means Halbrecht doesn't need Wren's signature to make the case, because the case is now standing in the open with a face on it, and the face is mine. It means she didn't have to choose. I filed it at 6:22, and I did not tell her that either. Ellery was at gate B14 on the 3rd at 11:15. I want to be fair about this, because I have been unfair about everything. She was not there for. She was flying to Sacramento. She had a bag and a coffee with a lid on it, and she was talking to a woman I didn't know, and if you had told her she was the antagonist of anything, she would have laughed warmly and been genuinely hurt for about 40 seconds and then made it into a story. She wasn't lying in. That's what nobody tells you about the people. They're not waiting anywhere. They're just going to Sacramento. Wren was at 2A's gate, 30 feet down, with a boarding pass in her hand and a coat over her arm. She'd said Thursday. It was Thursday. And the RAM crew were there, 9 of them, off shift in the terminal at midnight on a Thursday, which is not a thing that has ever happened in the history of Cordera Region. Priya was eating a pretzel with the aggression of a woman who has been told to act natural. Ilan was reading a departures board he had personally built. 38 people at that gate. I counted. Because I counted. I had the code. I'd taken it off her chair 3 days after I left it there, and I had not worn it in the building. And I had worn it exactly once, that night, walking through security at 11:40 with 9 pounds of charcoal wool and sleeves 4 inches past my. Ellery saw me at 30 feet and her whole face opened. June. God twice in a, are you flying? No. No? She looked at the coat. She looked at me inside the coat, which is a different thing, and I watched her assemble the caption in real time. And it was going to be fond, and it was going to be devastating, and it was going to go out to 4,000 people by breakfast. Okay, whose is that? And there it was. Whose is that? 3 words. Not where did you get it? Not that's not. Whose? Because everything in Ellery's grammar has an owner, and a woman in a coat is a sentence with a subject somewhere off frame, and all you have to do is find it. I looked past her. Wren was 30 feet away, and she had heard it. I know she had heard it. The whole gate had heard it, and she did not move. She did not step forward. She did not say, she's with me, which she had said once, for me, at this exact gate, at this exact time, and which she could have said again, and would have been believed by every person standing there. She said nothing, and I understood, standing in the middle of it, that this was the most generous thing anyone has ever done for me. She had done the claiming once when I had 90 seconds in one hand and no plan. She had put it on the table like a wall, and then withdrawn it before we landed, because she had never once in 11 years been willing to own a thing that hadn't asked to be. She wasn't going to save me twice. She was just going to be visible at 30 feet with the lights on, exactly where she said she'd be. So I took the coat off. I did it slowly, because 9 pounds of wool comes off slowly, and because my hands were not steady, and I did not resist. The gate got quiet in that way. Rooms get quiet not all at once, in a wave, from the middle outward. Then he stopped cleaning. Priya stopped chewing. I walked past Ellery. I did not answer her. I walked 30 feet in front of 38 people, and I held the coat out to Wren Amadi-Vesk, and I said, it's yours. It was always yours. I'm giving it back. She took it. She didn't ask why. It's November. I know, you'll be cold, yes. And then I stood there in a terminal at midnight in a thin shirt with nothing on my shoulders, which was the entire point, which was the only sentence I have ever constructed with my whole life. And I said it out loud, at volume, where everyone could hear it. I'm not going to Boise. I withdrew it at 5:31. I filed my own report at 6:22, on the 27th, under my name, all 9 changes. And I called it causal, and it's going to cost me the next 10 years, and I did it anyway. My voice did something on anyway. And I'm not leaving, and I'm not vanishing, and I'm standing here in front of all of you, choosing where I'm going to be. Then I looked at her. So I'm yours now. No, 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 Wren said. You may walk beside me. That's the whole offer. It doesn't come with a lease. That's a very small offer. It's the only honest one I've got. You could have said it at the bar. I know, she said. You'd never have believed it. And now? Now you walked 30 feet in front of 38 people with nothing on your shoulders, she said. And I didn't ask you to, and nobody made you, and you're freezing, and you're still here. Her hands were on the coat, palm down, all 5 fingers. So now I'll say it. Say it. I choose you, said Wren Amadi-Vesk, out loud at 11:56 at night, in a terminal, to 38 people and me. Out loud. In a room with the lights on. You can leave at any time, and I will not follow you, and I will still have said it. It was not permission. It was not surrender. It was a woman putting a fact on the table where everyone could see it, and then stepping back and letting me decide what to do. I closed the 30 feet. Somewhere behind me, Ilan said, finally. And then 9 people said it, and 2 strangers said it who had no idea what they were finaling. And the gate agent applauded, and Priya Raghunath made a sound I can only describe as a tug being asked to work. The drawer, she said, from 20 feet, has $63 in it. Priya, I want it on the record that I bet on Portland. Portland? Because I have faith in you, June. Because I thought you were a competent adult. Who won? Ilan won. She said it like a diagnosis. Ilan bet on, and I want to be precise here, because this man is a ghoul. Ilan bet, after it goes bad. He wrote that on a post-it. In September, Ilan, 30 feet away, buying pastries from a kiosk with $63 at midnight, said nothing. Sounds aren't findings, he said. I said, noted. Now, here is what did not happen. The report is still the report. 22 aircraft came down on the 11th and stayed down 31 days, and 400 people were told there was no work on Monday. And that was true, and it was because of a document with my name on it, and 6 of them still don't speak to me, and 2 of them are right not to. Halbrecht didn't need Wren's signature in the end, which was the point, which is also why the lawyers have my file open on a desk in Denver, and will for another 14 months. My neutrality. I am not the investigator who found the actor. I am the investigator who had a position, and that is a smaller job, and I will be doing it in a smaller room. And there is a 40% chance that in 3 years I am not in this industry at all. Ellery flew to Sacramento. She's fine. She posts things. She has never once been the villain of her own life, and she never will be. And I have finally understood that this is not something I get to fix. The caption goes out to 4,000 people either way, and the only thing that changed is that it no longer arrives. Nothing got solved. Not one thing. I want to be exact about it, because I spent 29 years believing the point was the solving. No problem in this story closed. No wound healed over. No institution learned anything. It will remember past 2 quarters. What changed is that I said where I was going, out loud, while people watched. That was all. That was the whole of it. Being chosen is not a reward for having become worth. It is only ever a sentence someone agrees to say where others can hear it. And it turns out that's the load-bearing thing, and everything else was decoration. She gave me the code back at 12:04 in the taxi line without being asked. I said, "This isn't yours anymore, is it?" "It is." "It's absolutely mine." "I'll want it in November." "It's November now." "Then I'll want it next November." Wren said, "And the one after that. And you'll have it in the meantime." And that's the arrangement. I put my hand in the left pocket. The stub was still there. 6 years old, soft as cloth. The ink gone completely. A flight from somewhere to somewhere that nobody remembers and no one will ever verify. I still have not read it. I never will. I asked her once at 2:40 in the morning why she kept it, and she said she didn't know. And that was the only time I have ever seen her not know something, and I loved her so much in that second that I had to look at the ceiling. Erosion asks no permission and leaves no mark. One morning, you simply weigh less. There is a boarding pass in that pocket from a flight nobody remembers, kept, and never claimed, and I have decided that is what I want to be.